We've all been there. You're in the kitchen, pacing back and forth, debating with yourself about where you left your keys or how to word a difficult email. Suddenly, you realize you're speaking out loud. You freeze, look around to make sure no one heard you, and feel that slight pang of embarrassment. For a long time, society has labeled this behavior as a quirk at best, or a sign of mental instability at worst. But science is starting to tell a very different story. Far from being a crazy habit, talking to yourself or externalizing your inner monologue is a sophisticated cognitive tool used by some of the most brilliant minds in history. When we think of geniuses like Albert Einstein or Nikola Tesla, we often imagine them in silent, stoic contemplation. In reality, Einstein was known to repeat his sentences softly to himself, a habit his family called the echo. He wasn't losing his mind, he was processing it. He was using his voice to move abstract thoughts into the physical world, where they could be organized and analyzed. This phenomenon is known as external self-talk, and it serves as a bridge between the chaotic, lightning-fast electrical signals of the brain and the structured, logical world of language. To understand why this habit is linked to high intelligence, we first have to look at how the human brain processes information. Our internal thoughts are non-linear. They're a mess of images, feelings, and half-formed concepts that move at speeds the conscious mind can barely keep up with. When you speak out loud, you force those thoughts through a bottleneck. You have to translate a cloud of ideas into a linear sequence of words. This act of translation requires an immense amount of cognitive control. It's like taking a tangled ball of yarn and carefully winding it into a neat, usable spool. By talking to yourself, you're essentially performing a real-time audit of your own logic. Psychologists have identified several distinct ways that self-talk boosts performance. The most immediate is the perceptual advantage. In a famous study, researchers asked participants to find a specific object, like a banana, in a crowded grocery store. One group remained silent, while the other group was told to say the name of the object out loud as they searched. The results were consistent. Those who spoke the word banana found it significantly faster. This is because hearing the word triggers a visual search mechanism in the brain. The sound of the word prepares the visual cortex to recognize the shape and color of the object more efficiently. If you talk to yourself while looking for your wallet, you aren't just being eccentric, you are literally sharpening your vision. Beyond simple memory tasks, self-talk is a masterclass in emotional regulation. This is where the distinction between I and you becomes fascinating. Brilliant thinkers often use distanced self-talk, where they address themselves in the second or third person. Instead of saying, "I am so stressed about this presentation," they might say, "Okay, why are you feeling stressed right now?" By switching the pronoun, you create psychological distance. You stop being the person drowning in the emotion and become the observer or the coach. This perspective shift allows for better decision-making under pressure. It's the difference between being a soldier in the middle of a chaotic battle and being the general looking at the map from a hilltop. High-intelligence individuals often have a high degree of metacognition, the ability to think about their own thinking, and self-talk is the primary tool for this. There is also the generation effect. This is a well-documented psychological principle which states that information is better remembered if it is generated from one's own mind rather than simply read or heard. When you explain a concept to yourself out loud, you are engaging the motor cortex, the auditory system, and the speech centers of the brain simultaneously. You are creating multiple hooks for that information to latch onto in your memory. This is why many programmers use a technique called rubber duck debugging. When they hit a wall with a piece of code, they explain the problem line by line to a literal rubber duck on their desk. Often, the moment they speak the problem out loud, the solution becomes obvious. The act of verbalization exposes the gaps in logic that the silent mind is too lazy to notice. We must also consider the role of the inner critic. Everyone has an internal dialogue, but for many it is a source of anxiety.
The difference in the genius application of self-talk is the transition from a passive inner monologue to an active, externalized dialogue. When you keep your thoughts inside, the inner critic can be overwhelming because it feels like part of your identity. When you speak your thoughts into the room, they become objects that you can interact with. You can hear a negative thought and literally say, "That doesn't sound right," or "That's an exaggeration." You are no longer the victim of your thoughts. You are the editor-in-chief. This habit also plays a massive role in complex problem solving. Think of the brain like a computer with limited RAM. If you're trying to solve a multi-step math problem or plan a complex business strategy entirely in your head, your working memory can easily become overloaded. You forget step 1 while trying to figure out step 4. Talking out loud acts as an external hard drive. It holds the information in the air for a split second longer, allowing your brain to move on to the next piece of the puzzle without losing the thread. It's a way of extending your cognitive reach. Historically, this has been the secret weapon of writers, philosophers, and scientists. They didn't just write, they spoke their ideas into existence. They treated their voice as a sounding board. If an idea sounds clunky or dishonest when spoken, it usually is. The ear is often a better judge of truth and rhythm than the eye. By talking to yourself, you are tapping into an ancient oral tradition of processing reality that predates the written word by tens of thousands of years. Your brain is wired to respond to sound. However, it's important to note the type of self-talk that matters. Not all mutterings are created equal. Mindless rumination, repeating the same worries over and over, doesn't provide a cognitive boost. The genius level of self-talk is purposeful. It involves instructional self-talk, guiding yourself through a task, and motivational self-talk, reinforcing your ability to handle a challenge. It is structured, it is inquisitive, it involves asking yourself questions and waiting for the answer to emerge from your subconscious. In our modern, hyper-connected world, we are rarely alone with our thoughts. We have podcasts, music, and social media filling every silent gap in our day. This constant external input actually stifles our ability to talk to ourselves. We are losing the art of the internal-external dialogue. Geniuses often crave solitude specifically so they can hear themselves think. They understand that the most important conversation you will ever have is the one happening between your ears, and sometimes that conversation needs to be loud enough for the walls to hear. So, the next time you find yourself explaining a plan to an empty room or narrating your way through a difficult task, don't stop. Don't feel embarrassed. You aren't losing your grip on reality, you're tightening it. You are engaging in a high-level cognitive exercise that organizes your mind, sharpens your focus, and calms your nerves. You are using your voice to navigate the complexities of life, just like the greatest thinkers before you. Talking to yourself doesn't mean you're crazy. It means you're present. It means you're observant. And quite possibly, it means you're a genius. Your brain has a lot to say. It's about time you started listening.